I want to ask you about the recent decision by the Bank of Canada to put that path of interest rate hikes temporarily, I guess, on hold, if you will. Is the Bank of Canada governor underplaying the oil weakness in Canada?
No, I wouldn't say he was underplaying it, because he was pretty transparent in his speech today with regards to the negative ramifications that it will have on the Canadian outlook. Now, the one qualifier he put in there, which is fair, is that when we think of 2015, where the Bank of Canada actually cut rates on concern with regards to what was happening in the energy sector and broader commodity sector, the difference between then and now is the energy sector is about half the size as it was then. So we've done a big recalibration in terms of that industry. And so the knock-on effects to the broader economy, just by the math of it, turn out to be slightly less. But it is a key in the speech that he had talked about today. It is a key underpinning to a more dovish speech that we heard out of him in terms of the direction of the data that we've seen just in the last 6 weeks from when they had their October monetary policy release.
Right.
Much more hawkish, upbeat tone about the direction of the Canadian economy, and that looks like it was marked down. We won't get new forecasts out of them until January, about January 9th, so we'll see how they are internalizing the forecast formally. But certainly the speech had a note of caution, and we saw the markets react. Just in the last 2 days, we've seen market pricing for a January hike go from 60 to 70% range in the prior 2 weeks to virtually nothing. So the markets, I think, picked up very clearly on the signal that he was sending that they're not as comfortable maybe moving as early as January 9th, given the amount of uncertainties happening in the near-term outlook.
And your thoughts on that? Will the Bank of Canada move on an interest rate hike in January or possibly later in the year?
No, we think they'll have to wait. I've been thinking that the odds were priced a bit too high as the data was evolving. One of the reasons that the markets held on to those market odds as high as they did until the last couple of days was that we didn't get a lot of communication out of the Bank of Canada relative to that hawkish tone in October, because they need to do their assessment on one, the permanency of this shock, and then two, that outlook forecast that they need to think about. So you certainly don't want them reacting to every little data point until they have a fair bit of confidence that this is a more longer or sustaining impact. And I think that's what we're starting to hear, that there is certainly some impacts that are going to be pushing into the first quarter of next year. So our view is that the next rate hike, likely the timing of it, if everything goes according to the forecast that's already been marked down, is at best March and maybe April.
Now, there were some other concerns that the Bank of Canada mentioned in their statement, and also Governor Poloz mentioned in his speech with respect to business investment, U.S.-China trade, as well as oil. What are some of the concerns that you see top of mind? Are you in agreement with those, or do you see anything else?
No, absolutely. I think he's called it exactly as it is in the economy. So one of the biggest surprises we had in the third quarter GDP report, we got this great, 2% growth headline, which is bang on what you would expect, trend growth would be in Canada. But when you started to look at the components of why you got the 2%, it was really coming off of the trade side. Consumer spending was only growing at 1.2%, so that's a little bit below trend. And the biggest surprise in the report was a pullback on the investment side. And we were not expecting that, because the Bank of Canada's own survey had indicated that optimism was fairly high in terms of intentions to invest within the business community. And yet what they said and what they did differed. And so what Governor Poloz was noting in his speech was basically that maybe the uncertainty surrounding NAFTA, where it was at its peak, actually did take a toll on investment. And we should make sure that comes off. Basically, we get that lift in the fourth and the first quarter. That is really critical to the outlook of the Canadian economy for a number of reasons. The productivity and productive capacity of the economy is highly dependent on it. But also, if your consumer is going to be contributing less as you rotate away from a debt-fueled type expansion, you have to rely more on business investment as a key driver of the growth. So this one's a really important one to if you're looking for your key indicators to watch, business investment is an important one.